Welcome, my people, to the Double V, the Progressive Voices Veteran Network podcast channel. And today I have a special guest, a friend of mine, Alex Villatoro. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me here, Charles. I'm really excited to be here and be one of the first ones to be interviewed. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and it's gonna be a good little show. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know,
Yes, I was born and then mostly raised in Chicago, Illinois. My mother's from Cuernavaca, Mexico, and my dad is from Guatemala City, Guatemala. Um, I had the opportunity to live and go to school in Mexico when I was younger, when I was 6. And I also lived in Guatemala when I was 10 and 11 years old. And then later came back to Chicago and resided for the remainder of my time here in Chicago. Went to Chicago Public Schools, went to Schurz High School, and right after high school, I signed up in the Army. At the time, I didn't really have any mentors or somebody guiding me for planning after high school. So I went with the first person that called me. It was a recruiter, and this was in during my senior year of high school. So I signed up, and right after I graduated, I shipped out in August of 2001, and I joined the Army Reserves. And then on my second week of boot camp training, 9/11 happened. Um, I wasn't too worried at the time because I was in the Army Reserves. But we ended up being um, activated, and we deployed in March of 2003. And I was there during the invasion of Iraq to the end of the year in 2003. Came back, continued with my service in the Army Reserve, and re-enlisted in 2007. And did another 6 years and got deployed to Afghanistan in 2010 and 11. Um, Soon after my deployment in Afghanistan, I returned, continued with the rest of my military service until perhaps the last I don't know 4 to 6 months. I went AWOL um, due to untreated PTSD, and I did get honorably discharged. But ever since then, I've been struggling with um, my untreated mental illness, and then just going back and forth with VA and trying to find the right treatment. Um, and I have a family now. I have 3 boys, and currently just focus with um, continue on with my normal life. Um, Another thing I have need to mention is soon after my service, I needed a job, and I needed a during my treatment at the VA, I was offered a position at the VA as a housekeeping aide, and I started my career with the VA. I was there for 12 years, and recently retired. So um, that's in short of my story.
wow, yeah, that's you know, um, a lot of veterans deal with that, PTSD and mental illness, and it's I deal with that too, and but it's So it was long. It's a long road, and stuff
Yeah.
like once you get out, everybody always talks about you know, the the deployed part and everything, but they never really talk about like, when you get back home and trying to get adjusted to I guess the real world and stuff. And that's the hardest part. And so, I've been through that down the road and obviously, because me personally. So but I'm glad that you're definitely retired, what I'm saying? So you can spend time with your kids and it's well deserved, the sacrifice that you gave to the country. So got a couple questions here, and so you know, I know that you're involved in activism, and what made you get involved in activism? What made you feel that way?
Um, uh, Soon after, or right after my first deployment in Iraq in 2003, um, I was 21 years old, and there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of confusion about my experience in Iraq, mostly with contractors, a lot of private industries, and when I arrived in theater in the country, I was expecting to see the majority of people in uniform, but on the contrary, it was a lot of civilians, and I quickly understood that this was more than just a military operation. Um, it was a lot of business, a lot of money involved. And I didn't understand at that time what the military industrial complex was. When I got back home, um, I tried to go back to school, was just in and out of different colleges. And I had difficulty adapting. And during my time in Northeastern, there were organizations, student organizations, talking about the Iraq War and just the questions about weapons of mass destruction and connections to Al Qaeda, and I started asking questions. It made me ask questions, and I started to look for a community, um, veteran community that had similar questions. And when I say questions, it would be more moral questions. Um, Asking myself if my participation in the invasion was right. And it just took a Google search at the time.
Mm,
Veterans who are against the war, and IVAW popped up.
mhm,
Uh, and I quickly emailed and reached out, asking, when do you guys meet? And I remember I got the call from one of the members, Aaron Hughes, and they were meeting in the Logan Square area, and which was around the neighborhood that I lived in. And I started attending their weekly meetings, and I found a community of veterans that questioned the integrity of this war. And I started getting, you know, more educated, more informed, and started taking action, um, participating in a lot of these speaking events in colleges,
mhm,
public settings, wherever we were invited. And along with that was a support group of civilians and mental health um, um, professionals. And that's when I realized that I needed some sort of help. But I didn't reach out to the VA. It was back then PTSD was frowned upon.
Yes.
Was
Yeah.
considered as of once you claim some sort of mental illness, you're out, or
Yeah.
you have your weapon taken away, and at that time I was newly promoted to E5 non-commissioned officer,
Yeah.
sergeant, and I um, I was afraid. I didn't think I was and had enough injuries, or I had all my limbs, so I had no reason to go to the VA. So during that time, I was self-medicating. I was treating my own mental illness with mainly alcohol, which
Yeah.
most service members do.
Yeah.
uh, but
Absolutely.
yeah, as I became more involved with IBAW and other organizations around the Chicago area, um, I, um, I it helped me build the courage to speak, um, and especially uh, towards the approaching my second deployment to Afghanistan. Um, there was a lack of proper mental health screenings. Uh, there was inadequate training leading up to our deployment. There was new equipment that we were not trained on, such as MRAPs, MTVs, new vehicles that were prone to rollovers at that time. And as the window to deployment was getting closer, I didn't see any proper training. So I tried to contact my command, and they kind of dismissed me. Didn't really take my concerns as seriously as I would like to, and during because of the short period of time, I decided to, as they call it, jump the chain of command, and went public. Um, and it's mainly to prevent from the many mistakes and unpreparedness that I had experienced in my first deployment. We were very unprepared. Just to give you an example, we arrived in Kuwait before most of our equipment did, and the equipment was still on the cargo ships, moving across um, the Atlantic Ocean. And as the war started and the war began, we had to go and move into Iraq to support 101st Infantry Division. But many of our soldiers only had one magazine.
Mm.
All of our magazines was still in the cargo ship. And at the time, I was a mechanic. We didn't have our tools. Um, and when we arrived, I was part of a 685th Transportation Company out of Hobart, Indiana, and we were a transportation unit with mostly drivers, truck drivers, motor
Mm.
vehicle operators,
Mm.
and they train in Fort Leonard Wood, and they train on mostly on automatic um, engines. Um, but when we arrived to Iraq, we were issued vehicles that were manual, stick shift, and most of my drivers did not know how to drive stick shift. And me as a mechanic, and then a couple other soldiers that knew, had to quickly train over 100 drivers um, how to drive a manual stick. And these vehicles were 818s. They were very old, and not proper equipment to drive in that type of environment, in a sand environment. So the only tool that we had to work with was a Gerber, or a Swiss Army knife, how some people
Mhm.
call it. And we went into Iraq with one magazine, and the rest of loose rounds. There was no GPS. That technology did not exist at the time, and radio communications was very limited to our headquarters, our captain commander, and um, NCO I see in charge at the convoys. That's if there was one. There were no maps. We had a scribble on a piece of paper. The roads. Um, when we went on missions, well, there were supposed to be 3-day missions, turned into 3 weeks. Um, and without any proper communication, soldiers that were sent on missions and did not return within the 3 days. Um, our commander was drafting MIA letters to
Wow.
send out to their families. Um, like I said, there were supposed to be 3-day missions with 3-day supplies, including food and water. But um, days will go by, weeks will go by, and no word from them. So I was those were my concerns for my second deployment, um, and we didn't get the training until we got into theater, into uh, um, in Afghanistan. And within a week that we were there, a week to 10 days, we went through all sorts of training, and it's pretty much all compressed in just a couple weeks, and until we took over. Um, um, for another unit. Because I decided to speak out publicly, I was um, labeled as a traitor, or me trying to stop the deployment because of my own
Mhm.
political ideals. And in reality, I was just trying to ensure the safety and of my unit and my soldiers. I was very at the time I was contemplating conscientious objection,
Mhm.
um, but that's a very long process. It could take over a year, and
Yeah.
uh, I will still be under active duty orders, probably in some barracks. You know, um,
Mhm.
waiting for
Wait,
the
wait,
process.
oh, I'm sorry.
But the soldiers in my platoon asked me to um, deploy with them, mainly
Yeah.
because they trusted in my leadership, and I didn't want another NCO from a different unit out of state to take over. And there isn't that trust or bond between you and your squad. So, um, I had the support from my platoon and the support from IVAW to help me through that experience, through that process. And after my deployment, I became disillusioned with the results, where the war was heading. Um,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to I didn't return. I couldn't return to my job. Uh, I fell into depression, and went AWOL. Kind of just had to hide from society.
Yeah.
But um, through the same support, um, the not just from organizations but from family, I ended up checking myself at the VA, and this is after my first attempt to suicide. I didn't think I would do something like that, but,
Mhm.
you know, your head goes to a very dark place where, you don't really think about, the consequences or the
Yeah,
results, So, I'm just, grateful to have this support, um, um, in the Chicago area and in these organizations and from family, most importantly. So,
yeah. Well, I made big plans for Iraq Veterans Against the War. I believe they started in 2004. Now they're called About Face. They're kind of like um, uh, the little the little brother sister to Vietnam Veterans Against the War. Probably more known organization. But
yeah, and
yeah,
most importantly, I think, it derived from Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and,
right,
um, um, it wasn't just, a community of, veterans in the same era as mine, but of the previous eras,
right,
Vietnam veterans who
mhm,
were mentoring us, and that was the most important thing.
right.
And one key figure was, Barry Romo.
Yes, yes,
Um, it
good.
was it was very impacting to get to talk to him about and then share his experience and
Yeah,
mostly uh, getting the courage from him.
yeah,
Be able to speak out and take actions like the same reenactment of throwing away the campaign medals when the United Nations came to Chicago in that same year after I got back in
yeah,
2012.
yeah, they don't. Mhm,
Yeah, and I got there was thousands of people, and I was helped moderate the event, and I got rid of three campaign medals, my OIF, OEF, and the NATO medal. Um, all the other medals, personal achievements that I've earned in the military, I'm kept and I'm proud of. But it was very difficult to carry those other medals in my chest. So once I think that after that event, it was a huge sense of relief. Um,
mhm,
and I was, I think that was a new chapter in my life after service.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, Barry Romo, he was a lifetime member of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. He just passed away a couple years ago, actually, like pretty much a couple years ago, and he was definitely a big influence on the next generation, longtime spokesman for Vietnam Veterans Against the War. Actually knew John Kerry too, and so he goes way back, and I definitely appreciate him being a mentor to us, the next generation and, giving us, advice and, also knowledge and stuff like that. So, um, anyways, let's, change the subject a little bit here.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel about the, current political climate in the United States? You know?
Um, it's um, it's a mix of emotions, saddening, concerning, um, anger, frustration,
Mhm.
not surprise. I think it's snowballing quickly with the new war now, and that it's not really completely an end as far as with the war with Iran.
Yeah,
Um, and it's impacting us in various ways,
mhm,
not just economically with surge in prices, but also in support networks and programs, welfare programs or the safety
yeah,
net. Um, and as the economy and then as the budget, is ballooning. It's it's hard to see an end in sight. I It got to a point where I I couldn't be immersed in the geopolitics because of my mental health.
Mhm.
Um, and that was part of the reason for my early retirement. With the new administration and um, new Doge committee, or I'm not sure what you call them. Of Forgot what Doge stands for.
I forgot. This some, it's a made up agency by this administration. Not even,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not even a true agency, but yeah, I forget the
but
name.
at the time, I was the acting chief of a department at the VA, of
Mhm.
Environmental Services, and we were already short-staffed. I was fulfilling two roles, and for 6 months now, and I started getting emails from Doge, and then there was a lot of changes, and they made my work much difficult,
Yeah.
and to the point it was impacting my team, not just their morale, but health wise. There was a lot of overtime, and most of the employees in my department were um, older in age, and quite a few of them, five at that time, had uh, strokes, uh, or heart attacks, and one soldier, I'm sorry, one veteran had committed suicide,
Mm.
um, and it got to a point where I couldn't handle it. I needed to do some self care, and um, you know I needed to check myself in, and I got to a point I wasn't fit to return to my position or to
Mhm.
fill that role again of doing two roles, and I couldn't support um, the new direction this administration was going, not
Mhm.
just with Department of Veterans Affairs, but many other agencies, and it triggered my PTSD. Um, um, I always been involved with foreign policy and the decisions that I made in Washington D.C. because it made a direct impact in my personal life, in my work life, and in my career. I'm both
Yeah.
military and a federal employee. Um, and I know the purpose was is to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse, but it was the opposite. It was more fraud, more waste, and more abuse. Um,
Yeah.
and I couldn't continue to serve in my capacity.
Right.
Um, so it was time to um, start um, a new chapter, a new career where I need to focus on my well-being and the well-being of my family. Um, this is I can't help but with what's going on. There's this sense of helplessness and hopelessness of what can we do? How can uh, we make a change besides our votes and besides hitting the streets and express our voices and practice our First Amendment right, and in protest. But that's not enough. It's going to take a lot more than that. Um,
Mm.
it's going to take real change. Um, but what does that look like? I It's hard to tell. Um,
Wow, that's for sure. Yes, yes, stuff like that. Yeah. No, and it's what you were talking about a little while ago. The changes at the VA. Um, I know recently I was in a meeting with an organization called Common Defense. I don't know if you heard of them,
yeah.
and they're really up on there are three things right now for Common Defense is VA. Um, I know ICE and I forgot the third one. But just recently they were talking about our local VA that that you know 300 people just lost their jobs at the VA in our local VA. So, and obviously I work there too, and um and a lot of people get this notion that uh government workers are lazy or that they don't do anything, but, like, really, in reality, the VA is, like, underfunded and, like, understaffed, right? So, now that they're putting more pressure on these VA employees, to do even more work than they're already doing, which I think is ridiculous, the the mentality of this administration. And I know recently at our local VA in Chicago, Jesse Brown, I know they got rid of the homeless program, or I believe they did. So that's going out too. Uh, right. So, you know, we got a lot of homeless veterans out there, right? Especially in the city.
Mhm.
And, that's where mostly um, people will have housing issues, affordable housing, or they usually go to the local VA in Chicago. So and now they're gonna get rid of that. So go figure. They always say, what do the Republicans always say that they like to go to war, but they don't really like to, you know, uh pay our take care of us afterwards, or for us to have benefits. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Perhaps some people might not know this, but many who are in the not just in the Department of Veterans Affairs, many of the employees of the Department of Veterans Affairs and other federal workers and other agencies, roughly about 33% of federal workers are veterans,
Mhm.
and who, like myself, speaking for myself, who wanted to continue their service in another capacity after wearing their uniform, and the mission and the vision was similar, and that's what attracted me to the VA, and try to make services, deliver services to our veterans in the most efficient way. But the shortages and the lack of funding has always been a struggle, and it I didn't it w- started getting worse around the summer of 2024, and it's been a constant struggle to hiring and getting the right funds to support your department and to deliver those services. And as you mentioned, they quickly able to come up with money to spend in defense and war, but there's not enough funding or lack of funding after uh, service, and many departments like the VA is impacted. So yes, um, I don't understand or what I kind of do. That Congress and representatives are quickly able to come up with a budget, for this new war in Iran, but are quickly able to um, put a halt in question when it comes to requesting funding for all these other services and all these
Yeah.
other agencies. And a lot of it, as we see now with the current events, you got the president Donald Trump, who is breaking records in trading. You know, um, uh, I think he was averaging 80 trades a day since he took office. With insider information and promoting these technologies and these defense contractors.
Yeah.
You got the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who's trying to justify that their representatives should continue to be able to trade in stocks to feed their families because I guess their $174,000 salary is not enough to feed a family. But and that they haven't raised their salaries since 2009, but they haven't raised the minimum wage either. you
Yep.
know uh, so it's that's the frustrating part. It's just it's maddening, and I try not to allow my frustration to turn into anger, to turn into hopelessness and helplessness, and just it's difficult to find, okay, what can I do in my capacity as a citizen, besides vote. That's which now it's being taken away from us, disenfranchised. They're redrawing these maps, and as a Latino, um, I feel the impact um, because of the what do you call is it the 13th Amendment that got struck down by the Supreme Court. Um, I remember during my deployment of Afghanistan, I was reading a book about the history of the civil rights movement and what happened in
Mhm.
Louisiana. And it was a tough read. I forget the title of the book. But I realized then that if it wasn't for the civil rights movement, I wouldn't have representation. And I get emotional because, as they said, shit rolls downhill. And first is going to be the African American community. We're seeing it now. We see it affecting the Latino community now with ICE raids. It's going to impact now. It's turning into a class war instead of just a racial war. Um, and I'm hoping that Americans, um, citizens, people living in this country, wake up and organize, find a community, um, and find a voice, um, and find power to take action.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, with the Civil Rights, Act, when they gutted Section 2, I was just really frustrated, and they can say it's about it's partisan, but it's racial demographics. We know that. I mean, and, it really hurts the Black community, and it's also gonna hurt the Latino community because it's very important to have representation, right? Because if you need representation because people could speak for you, and that's how you get funding from your communities. That's how you get contracts for jobs, and all sorts of stuff, right? And the people that are going to be in, when they redistricted these maps, they don't care about these communities. They're not going to represent the people in these communities. So it's really tough to see. And, when they were making fun of, like, the whole woke thing and everything, and I had family members making fun of that word. Well, by the way, too, that word comes from lead belly, okay? with the Scottsboro Boys, and he
Oh.
talks about that. And I'll send you that song, and they interview him, and he mentions that word. That's where it comes from. And just to let you know, Lead Belly, he was no soft man. He killed 2 people. So, all right.
Yeah.
I try to get people like, it's like, watch what you say, and like, you know,
Yeah.
the history of what that word means and who it came from. So, but I'm really upset about the Civil Rights Act, because it's about economics, right?
Mhm.
In your community,
Mhm.
so, and it's like people just like, slept on this. And like, the civil rights movement is probably the most important movement in United States history, because without uh, them, we wouldn't even, and this affects all different kinds of ethnicities, different colors, and working class people and poor people, right? That movement and stuff. It wasn't just about uh, it was about, when they passed that law, then they passed the immigration law in 1965, which my grandfather came as a bracero through that law, right? You know what I'm saying? So it all has an effect to each other. And people don't realize, they say, or when I'll see social media and they're like, why are these veterans protesting? It's blah 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 this day or blah blah blah. Well, let me give you some information. A lot of people that were part of the civil rights movement, like half of them were veterans from World War II, and they
Mhm.
realized that they wanted their rights and they didn't want to be treated like shit anymore. And I can name met plenty of them that we know were World War II, and they wanted better for their kids and their grandkids. So, uh, people don't tell you that part and stuff like that. Medgar Evers, Postal Williams, you know what I'm saying? Decorated too, from World War II. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just that really it really got to me, and this is why wanted to start this podcast show, and it's called the Double V, because the Double V campaign was used in World War II, from the African American community, and it means 2 victories, right? And all the
Mhm.
stuff that's going on right now in our country, our country's turning into a fascist country. You know what I'm saying? It really is. And the
Yeah.
Devil V meant, you know, victory against tyranny, slavery abroad, but it also meant the other V that, also victory at home against racism, inequality. So that's why I want to bring this term back again, the double V. It's an amazing term, you know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So I want to popularize this term again. But also, just not to change the subject, but I need to ask you this question, as you being a Latino man, that we know that the Latinos voted in big numbers for Donald Trump
Yeah.
at 46%. And as me being, uh, a minority, I'm half African American, half Mexican. It was very, very disappointing for me, for Latinos, to vote for Donald Trump, knowing that his rhetoric, what he said about Latino community for the last 10 years. You know what I'm saying? This man also said that, they're poisoning our country. Who said that? Hitler said that. And you're still going to vote for this man. So, explain to me, why did Latinos vote for this, and how do you feel about it?
Man, I was just as frustrated, and I experienced this firsthand. During the gathering, during the um, lead to the election of what was it, 2024? And I was sitting with a couple of family members or acquaintances, in my house, and we got to talking to politics, Biden, or or Trump, and I was surprised to hear that a couple of the Latino men and were planning on voting for Trump. I got really upset. I don't understand why, and I
Mhm.
asked him, and well, because he says it like it is, because he says that it's gonna bring jobs and it's gonna bring the
Eh,
prices down, and
Hey, yeah,
I I I
he said.
understand. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. He said how it is. Well, he said what he was going to do to to Latinos, right?
Oh, I started, bringing up a lot of talking points, about his
Mhm.
immigration policies, and his ties to, with Epstein, and those concerns, and they didn't seem to be well informed on that. They were more concerned about the economy, and they were frustrated with, I guess, with the Biden administration, and the lack of economic opportunities, the housing market. It's just and I think it's because Trump just mouthed off well, what people wanted to hear,
Yeah,
these false promises or these lies, and they I think it became like a political theater. Hey, let's just vote for this guy, see what happens. And now we're seeing the results. So really, that's my best guess as far as why so many Latinos voted for Trump. Part of it is the lack of information, of being properly informed about how about the what they're involved in, and how politics work, and they're I think most of them are more concerned with day to day life, and that's the pocket, and uh, I just hope that moving forward, the Latino community is better informed, does a better job in making those decisions, and how their vote affects um, um, the country. But at the same time, I think we've been losing more of our voting power. I think it's quickly being bought by um, PACs.
mhm, yeah,
APAC, who recently uh, put in a lot of money in the race in Kentucky, um, and
yeah,
Jesus, and I think the more people are waking up and to see who's funding what candidate, what agenda, who are they representing, and with um, I forgot this. What do you call it? Once PACs became legal, um, we started seeing all this amount of money into these politicians from billionaires, and I think at that point, that's where we lost our voting power, our voice. So, uh,
yeah, yeah. Money definitely is a big problem with voting and stuff like that. It's crazy, and as a APAC, their influence, it's really ridiculous. But I want to get a little back to that the Latino thing. For me, I think there's a lot of I think it's a mixed pot, like of why they voted for this. I think one is that they tried to fit in, to the white community. That's one, and I think that goes runs down deep, since being colonized, right? And in the Latino community too, uh, there's even races against dark people, right? It's like light skin versus dark skin, and if you watch the novelas, who is always the one that's serving people, right? The dark skinned Indian looking woman, right? And stuff. I think that's what it has to do with it. Also, I think it has to do with, you know, uh um machismo too. I'm not gonna vote for that black woman. That's what it was too. You know, and another thing was economics, right? That's another thing. But I always tell people, economics is very important. We all know that. We all have to make a living. But if you don't have civil rights, you all those rest of the things don't even matter, right? If you can't even have civil rights, you know? And we always, black and brown people, always have to be on our feet for this, right? We always have to be on our feet. We always have to be alert. And these are the outcomes, right? Oh, yes, yes, economics is important. But if you don't worry about those other things too, those other things are not going to matter. So I think it's a lot of those things. And to be honest, I think it's, not informed, right? Educational wise, right? Too, right? And I was really frustrated, especially with our city, how the community, especially the Latin community, how we treated the Venezuelan community. I was really upset about
You
that.
know?
It was really ridiculous. I had a person that was I'm not going to mention his name, but from Ecuador, and he hated on the Venezuelans and said, I'm voting for Trump because of the immigrants. And I said, well, if you could get that way, how the Venezuelans are getting here, and they're coming here legally.
Yeah,
And he's, oh yeah, I would have done the same thing, right? So, but it's part of history, right? You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
it is.
They don't just go against one people; they go against everybody, and that's what I keep on trying to tell, the Mexican community here in Chicago. Like, they're not just going to come against, uh, Venezuela. They're going to come after everybody because they, at the end of the day, they see us all the same. They just see that we speak Spanish. They don't really know the differences, they're like, they gotta go and stuff. So,
Yeah, I think one major contributor is the mass media and the
mhm.
power of media of what they present in everybody's personal screens. And going back to the Venezuelans who were a the result of destabilization by the United States.
Absolutely.
And before the Venezuelans, you had the Haitians, you had Somalis, um, um, you had Cubans too. I mean, we're going way back, and as soon as a group, a refugee group, comes in into this country in need, because of the actions by the U.S. The U.S. Or politicians are quickly to blame that marginalized group as the responsible why the economy is so bad because um, of these refugees and of immigrants, and this is playing out now. And it's just sad to see that people, Latinos, white complexity or light complexity, who have documentations, who are citizens or residents, in order to fit in, hey, I'm on this side now, you know, and forgetting that our ancestor, our parents, our grandparents, experience the same um, obstacles, the same discrimination, in this country, and it's sad that instead of reaching a hand and help our community out, it's it's very individualized. It's kind of like, fuck you, I got mine, you know?
That's a
So,
very Calvinist thinking. That's a very United States way of thinking, right? And stuff. And it's like it's crazy because like, and I'm really upset with like the mainstream media and newspapers because if you looked at like 10 years ago when like, and we know that like immigrants do like their crime is so low, right? It's
yeah.
comparing to like citizens. But like now you see like, like 10 years ago when someone did a crime and they're from a different country, they wouldn't say that. They would just say, oh, this person such and such did this crime. Now they always have to say undocumented or this person from this country, right? That rhetoric and stuff like that. And that whole rhetoric with like the Venezuelans were like they're thieves, they're rapists, all that stuff. It's like but that's part of history. We've always heard that kind of stuff. They did that to the Japanese Americans. They do that to the African Americans all the time in media. It's just it's something to like. They did that to desensitize, to make people
Right.
desensitized. Yeah, to the this population and stuff. And the
Mhm.
reality is, Alex, no. I mean, there was no Venezuelans here really in the United States except for like Miami or like or like the ones that like were rich, like in Texas, like through oil, they worked through, you know what I'm saying, and that was their industry. And in the United States, the sanctions and all that stuff, and with Venezuela, then you started seeing Venezuelans coming here, right, and stuff, thinking that this would be a good opportunity for them. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Maduro was a great leader because he wasn't, and he's not Chavez. Okay, we know that and stuff. But the United States definitely had to play part. They froze their assets, GDP and stuff. What are you gonna do? So
Yeah.
and so, but the average American doesn't look at that. They just look at the Venezuelan guy who's living on the street, right?
Mm.
And another thing that really got me upset with the Latino community when I used to see this, especially my city, that's a sanctuary city, right? You know, uh, and when they were sitting there like, well, my parents came here, the hard way and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here, actually, we actually got here easier because we already had a Mexican community here. So you can actually go live with your uncle, your friend, and they'll hook you up with a job. You know what I'm saying? They have the resources, they have the stores, you have a community already because the Mexicans that came here 100 years ago paved the way, like the Emilio Aguirre, who he is. They paved the way for us. The
Mhm.
Venezuelans didn't have a community, right? So it's
Yeah.
harder for them to get connected to things and stuff. And as a Latino community, instead of us helping them, we turned our back on them, and that's just the truth, and so it's just really disappointing, especially in my city, that we were mean. This is a democratic city, but it tells you a lot that about we're not tolerant of immigrants and racists and all that stuff. You know,
And, I mean, I think the factor or the reason is really, um, it wasn't much of a choice. I think, our our many Americans are too busy, to try to make ends meet.
Mhm.
That, you gotta, you know, um, not just a full-time job, but, some have 2, 3 jobs. They got kids to take care of. They're caught up in this system where, um, there isn't really a time for community, to think about others. Everybody's trying to survive. Everybody's trying to make the American dream happen, and every day, is it's more out of reach for many Americans. So I understand the frustration when a community in need comes and takes these services, or it's impacted. Hey, housing where we got many people that are without housing. Many citizens here, many veterans without housing. I understand those frustrations and I think politics took advantage of that, pin us against each other, and do the blame game. And
I mean,
it's frustrating. So
I get all that, but but you're going to start complaining when people start coming here. You should have already been on your feet. You know what I'm saying, and been doing this right. And you should know the bigger. I mean, I could understand someone like me and you. We understand more of the bigger picture, but the community should already be fighting for these things before uh, people are coming here, and that's a big problem, right? And
well,
stuff.
there
You
there isn't a community.
you know.
Well, the communities are very small and marginalized. Like I said, not many people have the time to take part
What
in a.
where were your complaints before they came here? That's what I'm saying. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
You're already struggling already before and stuff like that. And I always tell people the way how they treat you here in the United States, I'm talking about black and brown communities particular, that's how they treat these countries, right? They take their resources because we know why we have this policy against Venezuela. They have the
Mhm,
biggest oil reserve, right? They don't care about those people over there and stuff. And I always try to tell people and poor people all the time. It's like, it's like the way how they treat you here is the way how they treat these countries, these third world countries. They call
mhm,
them South. There's a new saying for third world countries now, but that's how they treat. You know what I'm saying? But you got to put all the connections together and stuff like that. So, but it's unfortunately it's very disappointing. But you're right. At the end of the day, it divides everybody, right? It makes African Americans against Latinos, Latinos against African Americans against poor white folks, right?
mhm.
World. So that it's a divide and conquer game, right? And stuff. Because we know that Trump administration don't care about minorities, don't care about poor white folks, working class folks. They don't care about that. They're white Christian nationalists, most of them, and they're the Nazis. But anyways, I want to change the subject a little bit, kind of, you know, kind of winding it down. Um, so, obviously, this podcast is not just national news, but I want to do local, right? Because I love my city, right? And we have a great city, and I know we get this reputation, uh, that the city's murder capital and blah blah blah. But when people come here, they're like, "This is an amazing city." Like the great podcaster, former journalist Karen Hunter. She has a popular podcast, and she just came recently to Chicago State to, to talk at at the graduation. She said, "This is like," she loves this city. She said it's like top 3 cities, and this lady's traveled all over the world. She's from New York City, so that already tells you. She's like, "Black community's great here. Yeah, we have high crime because we know the history of, policies against these communities and Latino communities. This is not because these communities are bad. It's because these communities were disfranchised. That's what it is, right? Who has money, who doesn't? And let's just tell the truth how it is, right? You know, you have more resources, you could do more things. You know what I'm saying? You have more resources in your community, you have more positivity, and your mental health is a lot more positive. But I just want to so we got Brendan Johnson, right? Mayor Brendan Johnson. He's at his 3rd year now. His 3rd year mark. How do you think he's doing as a mayor? Um,
Oh, like I said, my politics is very broad and it's more
mm,
national level, but at a local level, I haven't really seen much change in my experience. I think especially in the very beginning in his first year, I can't get this image out of my mind. Him running away from the cameras, and as just an example of him avoiding accountability and or holding himself accountable, even if it was out of his control. He's the mayor of the city, you know. And I think he's quick to shift blame on other outside factors, which could be a reason, but um, that still doesn't take away that okay. What are you doing about it? How are you being proactive and taking steps and fixing the needs. Um, so I, uh, I especially with this whole Bear Stadium, um, it should be the last on the list. None of us are concerned, and actually, most Chicagoans expressed that they don't They don't want to invest in this new stadium, so that's out of the question. And
Yes.
I think he should focus more on what's going on with our individual communities, especially uh, um, the Latino community, with ICE raids going on, and despite of his efforts, I don't think it was enough to protect the citizens of Chicago. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm not too much involved with the city politics.
Mm.
It's the impression I have is just a lack of leadership and accountability from his part.
Well, and you make a lot of good points. I think me as being a more of an insider, as you know, that I'm more involved with the IPOs and being more involved with the locally, community wise, organizing. Um, I definitely think that you're right about his media thing when he first like when he first became mayor, they were really bad of with the press and stuff. And this has been told by you know good sources by me, journalist sources, right? The lefty sources and stuff. I think he made mistakes in his beginning. Uh, you know, uh, c- rookie mistakes, all that kind of stuff. Very inexperienced too, governmental. Uh, but I would give him. I think he's been more of a centrals, mayor, you know what I'm saying? And that's what it's funny because north side white community, they'll complain about him and everything, but he's been more of a centralist than anything. I mean, he gave a raise to to CPD, not even Rahm Emanuel or Lori Lightfoot, and they still hate him. So, and I know he's lost some progressive, votes and stuff because he's not progressive enough, right? But this has always been like that with black bears, right? They've never gotten credit. They're always under the microscope, right? More than white mayors and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Through the media on everything. And I think he did a great job with ICE. Because if we would have had Paul Vallis as the mayor, who's pretty much a Republican, you know what I'm saying, and high, you know what I'm saying, in clothing, right? Sheep's clothing. It would have been crazy. You know what I'm saying? They would have done anything they wanted to do. So I think that like he did support the Latino community with getting heat from the black community too. So you also got to think about all those kind of things that he has to satisfy every single, ethnic group, Crane Chicago, all you know what I'm saying? Business people. Um, so we have a history of that in our city that, oh my God, Rahm Emanuel, you know, dailies, they were the greatest. Let's kiss their feet, the Chicago Tribune, they're the best and everything like that. Even though I can mention many, many things that they did, right? And stuff, but that's the mentality that we were sucked into. So,
I,
uh,
yeah, it just brings me it reminds me that it recently came back in the news, the parking meters
yeah,
it being resold to a new company,
I
and
mean,
just
I
this.
the podcast I go on, Ben Jarowski, the legendary, journalist, he always talks about that, and like everybody's like, "Well, Daly was great," like when we're sitting there, and I'm like, "He sold our parking meters, bro." Like that was like the stupidest like thing you could ever do, and all those aldermen, like they all like agreed with it, right? Except for like two of them at the time or something that voted because they were scared of him. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. They have money. Rahm Emanuel, Daley's, they had power and money and stuff, and they said you got to go with my way, to the aldermen, aldermanic city council members, and we'll support you on your little campaign. So it's a lot to do with that, right? So, the parking meetings, I mean, like, it's worst deal ever made in Chicago, but he's the greatest mayor ever. So, who to me is the greatest mayor ever, and he was, and that's Harold Washington. And there's never going to be like someone like him, so took down the machine. But that's another story for another time. But anyways, we talked about the Chicago Bears. I feel the same thing about that. It's like we need to, we're bloked to, with CPS, right? But we're talking about building a stadium and all that stuff. So,
Yeah,
uh,
the Chicago residents are already dealing with a surge in higher property taxes,
mm,
and um, there's we can't simply accept more subsidies and more taxpayer money to go and solve the Chicago Bears wishes, you know.
um,
So they have more than enough money and investors to um, build a stadium. It don't matter where, but when it comes to asking Chicago residents, uh, you know we're it's just we're it's not there, you know. So
uh, yeah, I mean, like the McCaskies, they can build their own thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're billionaires, go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Like, and let them go to Indiana. We'll see. They're not going to go to Indiana. Nobody's going to want to go to Indiana. They're not going to go. And if they want to, then go ahead. Let me tell you, we'll get a new team anyways, right? Because the NFL is about making money, and they know Chicago. We'll get another franchise team, just like the Baltimore Ravens. As much as I love the Chicago Bears, I love our children more and their education. So if the Bears go, bye bye Bears. Yeah, we'll get another team. So, but I hope they do stay. You know what I mean? So it's some kind of deal. But anyways, I'm gonna close it down now, and I want to thank you, Alex, for coming on here, and I really appreciate you. You coming on. So,
yeah, yeah, I'm very glad and happy that you started this channel, this new station, and I love conversations, man. We've been having conversations for years since the first day we
mm,
met, and I'll be looking forward to more episodes and more interviews. And just one question is, what made you get started start your own podcast? What gave you the courage to start your own channel?
well, I think people have been trying to tell me to do this for years now, like educational stuff. Me as being a Chicago historian and,
Yes.
being involved in a lot of things. And also, too, I just got sick of seeing all these, like, veteran podcasts. They're all very conservative, even like the compensation ones. Like, they had this, I stopped watching them because, like they're sitting there talking about, like, well, I don't agree with the cuts, but they don't wanna, like, put their they don't wanna tell the truth, right? Yeah, they're right, they're making cuts at the VA, dude, and a lot of them are, veteran employees and stuff like that, so they're standing on the sidelines, right? You know what I'm saying? To see who's gonna come on top, right? Well, we really need you now and stuff, so and we know that most of the, veteran community is conservative. I would say maybe it's 65% conservative, 35 maybe,
That would be my
Democrat.
best guess, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would say that. So that's one of the reasons, you have all these podcasts on here, but I wanted to give another perspective and stuff, so,
Oh, yeah,
um,
and it's a sense of relief, and to find a similar voice and for you, to have the courage to speak your mind and put thoughts into words and hopefully words into actions. And as I mentioned before, what we lack here is community, and I could see and hope that you start building a community around this channel with other like-minded veterans, and not just in the Chicagoland area or in the Midwest, but across the U.S. And I hope it reaches all to all those who are listening and engage and speak up and participate and share their own personal stories and experiences like you gave me the opportunity to do so. And because of you, it gave me the courage to sit here and speak my mind. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, brother.
Well, thank you for coming on. Okay, people. Well, until next time, all right? Stay conscious, stay free, stay double V. Take it easy, and happy Memorial Day.
Well, happy Memorial Day, brother.